we go into show mode here on Saturday, Wednesday. Welcome everybody to another episode of Sales Chatter, and we are back in the usual setting right now.
Yes.
And DJ, I just got to say, thank you so much for being so patient on Monday, and Jeff, thank you for jumping in yesterday. I saw the show. What a great show! DJ's getting better at that whole intro thing and getting the video going.
I'll try it.
But
I'll try it.
you know what?
I'm not as good as you, my friend. But
come on now, stop it! I'm gonna have to cut a hole in the wall just to get my head out of here after. Guys, welcome to Saturday, Wednesday, and today we're going to talk about the second part of 2022.
Welcome to the HPLS podcast. Live, relevant, and high performance information, conversations, and education weekly.
Looks like Lisa crushed it by a mile. Here we go. Good morning, Lisa.
Well, so I'll tell you, I leave LinkedIn up now, and I seen you popped up live, but I didn't even get the notification. I usually get both, so we'll probably be dragging here a little bit.
You mean I popped up but you didn't?
Yeah. So that's probably.
Did you pair the channels?
Yeah.
Okay.
They're up top.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? It's another technological.
It's just LinkedIn, y'all. Just keep hopping back and forth.
I'm wondering if you use Rogers. It's Did you guys hear about that? That was crazy.
Yeah.
So, and here's the thing. Here's one thing I didn't know. So Rogers in Canada is the 911 system.
Oh,
really?
So there was a thing on the news last night, and I had no idea until last night.
Oh my gosh.
Businesses are losing their marbles to the point where the federal government sat down with Rogers and said, whoa, because apparently 911 was down. Like there was all these I wake up in the morning, I'm like, God bloody, like my internet's down and I'm gonna have to stream off my phone all day. And it's like, my wife's trying to contact her mom. She's got a home phone and cell with Rogers. None of it's working. My buddy's running a business. None of it's working. Goes like nothing's working. We're submitting orders online and it's going like into cyberspace. And you think about it, right? All of these processes, credit card, payments, acceptance, all of it. Like when we look at how dependent we are, do you remember the old days? Some of you might not remember this, but do you remember the old days? They'd put your credit card in this machine. They'd put this like paper over top. I remember as a kid, I would go in, and this is how interesting it is when you're a kid and when you grow up. And I remember my first credit card when I was 18. And I'd be looking at my balance and I'd be like, oh man, I got like $40 left on my balance of my card. And it's like $100 thing. I'm like, okay, but by the time they process it, by the time they submit it, I can make a payment. And, so you're like, yeah, go for it. And it's like, yeah, perfect. There we go. But, nowadays you think of the internet and how it's interwoven in every single aspect of our lives. Like,
oh yeah,
even to the point where I go on my phone and I know this sounds so minor and it's a total first world problem. Like I can't even adjust my thermostat on my phone. I actually have to walk downstairs. And I know that sounds horrible I just said that.
You did not just say that out
loud. I did. That is brutal. But like
I know what
you're
talking
lights that I would
about,
normally.
That does suck when you have that ability to just mess with it right there. Yeah,
you know what it is, DJ? You're lying in bed and you're like, oh my gosh, it's hot in here. Just crank the AC 2 notches. It'll cool everything down. I can go to sleep. And you're lying in bed and you're comfy and you're like, are you kidding me? I have to get out of bed. And this is crazy because I remember when we didn't even have a remote for our TV and I'd have to go and change the channel. And for all of you that didn't know, that was a dial on the TV, like click, 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 right? And it was, or like a button where it's like 7 stations and it was almost like an 8-track radio where you got to click buttons. But so it's like one of these things where you're like, damn, I got to get out of bed. Now you're not comfy. Now you sit down again. And now you're like, you know what I mean? And I know it sounds so minor compared to what.
Was it a color TV?
I eventually we did get a colored TV. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So
yeah, but when I was first a kid, I remember playing. I grew up very, very poor, and we grew up in what they call a co-op facility, where it's like
Right.
everybody's rent's different based on your income, right?
Right.
And I remember playing Atari because my buddy lent it to me, and I remember paying, and it was just that one where it was just like beep, beep, beep.
Yes.
But it was the best
Pong.
thing since sliced bread, right? Yeah. And I was like, oh my gosh, like you'd play it for hours. It's literally just a ball, a pixel actually going back and forth. It was so cool. And and it was black and white TV. And then when color came, I'm like, oh my God, they're blue. And when they blow up, they're red. I'm like, this is the best thing ever. And now I'll go downstairs and my son will be playing like YK10 basketball or something. And I'm like, oh, who's playing? And he's looking at me like, what are you talking about? And it looks like you're watching an NBA game, right? And I'm like, who's playing? He's like, it's a video game, Dad. I go, no, it's not. Like, I'm like, okay, am I totally out of the scoop here or what? But
Oh yeah.
Joshua says, Data Date is my favorite. Yes, sir. It's
Yes.
my favorite
What's
too,
up,
actually.
Josh?
Yeah. So with that, Dean, I apologize. I just consumed 6 minutes and 7 seconds of this whole thing talking about bloody internet. But interesting how
long was it out?
I'm not.
How long was it?
It was out a good 16 hours.
That's what I thought.
No.
Holy cow.
So we were out 5 a.m. till, well, we woke up the next morning and there was internet. But it'd be interesting, and I'll follow the story and keep you guys in the loop, because I'm willing to bet if Rogers is doing government services, those services were probably reinstated faster than anything.
Oh,
but they're saying, like, so Rogers right now is crediting 3 months of our bills. Every Rogers customer is being credited 3 months.
Oh, wow.
And it'd be interesting to see what the deal is going to be, because you got to think, even if 911 was down for an hour, like what's the fallout of that? Like, how many people died because they couldn't get an ambulance? Like I mean, it's a shame to start thinking like that, but you have to. And if you're a provider for a government entity like that, like, to go down is crazy.
Oh yeah, now you're in a mad panic to figure out how to fix it. I mean, you should.
Yeah, it was.
I mean, look at what Josh just said.
Yeah, because Livingston had to 4 days because Livingston had no internet access. Yeah. I mean, you so you think about them. Interesting, isn't it? Because there's still people now that are out. Like, still now, and we're talking.
That's what I thought. I thought I heard that.
Yeah.
I thought there was some
we're talking.
still without it.
What was this, Friday, DJ? Was it Friday?
Yeah.
It was Friday, yeah. So there's still people out almost a week later. Still no, and this is the thing. All our phones, our TV, our internet, all of it is one cable into the house with Rogers. Super convenient, but when one goes out, everything gone. Like,
it's gone.
When your internet goes out, your phone's gone. Your everything, your fax line, everything. So as a business who uses Rogers, all of a sudden every single phone line's down. Right? How long does it take to get the message out? Because you can't even send a mass email to all your clients because your email's down. Right? Like, it's just this snowball that, like, and it'll be interesting to see what the end dollar amount is that Rogers spent. And apparently, from what I understand, and this could be right or wrong, if anyone has any other information, please share. It was an update. They were trying to update the network to make it better, and it crashed it. So, you know, so it's interesting, right? Like I don't know if you guys have ever dove into the web world, but doing websites and building websites for people, I was always saying, okay, when's the least amount of traffic on your site? Well, it's Sunday night. Well, that's when we switch your site over. Like, if you're moving from like a WordPress to a Joomla, or, you know, if you're transferring servers or anything, you always do it on the time when there's low traffic, because there's always something, a little glitch, or some images don't transfer properly and you got to reinstate the images or reinstate the hyperlinks. Like, there's always this few little details on the back end that nobody really thinks of. They think it's just go ahead, transfer it. So you think of, you know, hundreds of thousands, millions of people using this system that they have to update. Right? Hence the reason they start at like 3 a.m. and go till 5, because most businesses are closed. You know what I mean? Volume of calls and incoming is down. But very interesting. So it's something that I actually think Josh's comment here, 4 days because Livingston had no internet access. Like, and you know what, Josh? Here's the second thought to that. Would you not think a company the size of Livingston, who the UPS owns them, would not have a backup of some way, shape, or form, like a link to Elon Musk's satellite or something. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you would think because
Starlink.
well,
Yeah.
I mean, but here's the thing, right, DJ and Dean, you would see this as well. Think about what that disruption. If every Livingston customer could not clear customs for 4 days, how does that disrupt the supply chain as a whole?
Whew.
Because
And
if
speaking
their
of, what do
internet
we got
access
going
is
on?
here, well, if their internet access is here, does it affect overseas because the communications here? You know what I mean? Like there's all these what ifs that we I think are still going to come out in the wash, honestly.
Yeah. Agreed.
So, with that intro, Dean, what do we got going, Brother Bear?
Yeah, what are we working on, Dean?
Yeah, so June imports data is out, came out on Monday, although they're still working through some of the bill of lading certifications. It was a little bit late this month, and I'm not sure why, from IHS Market / peers, part of Standard & Poor's Platts. But they, what happens is every month they get all the bills of lading from every import, every export. They process it, clean it. It's in the Customs and Border Patrol data that all of the bills of lading are stored in is notoriously ugly. It is a terrible data set to work with, and there's an enormous amount of cleaning. It's not the CBB's fault. It's the fact that every bill of lading has so many different fields and freeform text fields, and it's just a really difficult data set to work with. So no reflection on CBB. They do a wonderful job, but the data takes a lot of cleaning. So we're still working through that right now. But as it sits, we just recorded the second busiest month of imports on record, and the
on record,
being last month. So we're still bringing in a lot of import volume. It's up about 2% month over month based on the data I'm seeing. If that changes, I'll update you. But it's certainly the second busiest on record, and some of the ports. I'll give you a data point I read on Journal of Commerce. And by the way,
Dean, can I ask a question? Could I ask a question on that?
Yeah.
Do you think this had anything to do with Shanghai being down and then opening up in May for containers to hit in June?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's partly that, Lunar New Year, February, March volumes slow down because manufacturing shuts down around the Lunar New Year celebrations at the end of February. So volumes always fall off on the Trans-Pacific trade lane and the trade lane from Europe in March, April timeframe. So it's no surprise in May and June and July for volumes to be increasing. What's different this year is I think a lot of shippers are pulling forward, or what they call front-loading their imports. So they're pulling them forward further. So instead of August, they're bringing them in June and July. So they're front-loading their orders. So it's a longer lead time, right? Because the ships are taking longer, the trains are taking longer, the warehouses are full. So they're pulling it forward, just like shippers did in late 2018. And I think it was January 1, the Trump tariffs on 20% on Chinese imports were coming in. Everybody pulled, I think it was 18, I can't remember the year, but they pulled forward a lot of volume right in the last quarter of that year, and there's just a surge of imports. Similar thing here where shippers are pulling forward volume. So I think the answer is yes, Dan. I think it's part of it. But the big vessels are way off schedule. I read this week that it's going to take well into next year for the big liner services to get their mega vessels back on service, back on schedule, back on their sort of 3-month rotation around the planet. It's a logistical feat that's going to take a while to get them back in sync. So I think we're seeing return to peak season volumes, but a little bit sooner than what we would have expected. But we're also seeing something else that's constricting the supply chain, which is what I wanted to talk about today, because those in the logistics side of the business and the brokerage side of the business, if you remember at the start of the year, I think we said that it's going to take all of this year to get our supply chain back to normal. I think, Dan, you called it the year of the transparency.
Yeah.
I think something like that. So it's going to play out just like that, because the inland supply chain is where the problems are as much as anything now, and it's got to do with shipper detention times and dwell times. And so if you work back from, I think shippers are telling us the labour problem's being resolved. So they've got labour in the warehouses, but their warehouses are full of inventory, and that sometimes it's not the right inventory. We talked about that last week. So the warehouses are full, and then this is going to take a while to work back to the port thing in Savannah that I want to get to, because I think that's an indication of what's to come. The warehouses are full, so that means they're taking longer to unload import containers. Those import containers are sitting longer on chassis trailers. Therefore, it's taking longer to get the chassis trailers back with the empty to when it's unloaded. So the dwell time is the culprit. Journal of Commerce reported the other day that dwell times are the biggest issue that they're dealing with over time, because it's resulting in this chronic congestion and vessel backlog due to these longer dwell times of these import boxes. Jam-packed warehouses are at the heart of this, I think. It's slowing down. There's a great article in JOC today about how it's slowing down the intermodal network. So trains are slowing down because their average road speed today track speed was 24.41 miles an hour. But the bigger issue is that the warehouses are getting clogged up, which means it's just like truck warehouses were clogged up, right? Shippers were doing more drop and hook because they couldn't unload the volume of trailers, because the trailer became free storage, additional storage. So if you think about a train's what? If a train's got a couple of 153-foot containers, I estimate that's about 100,000 square foot of warehouse space sitting on a train. So if warehouses are full, shippers aren't in a hurry to get this freight at the moment because they've already got plenty of inventory. They're pulling it forward for back to school and fall and holiday season. So there's this congestion building on the inland rail network that's banking up at terminals. It'll flow back to ports. We'll start to see the same issues emerge that we saw last year. And I think the key point that I read this week was Jeff Lynch at Georgia Ports Authority, which is Savannah. He said he expects higher numbers of vessels at anchor today, and I counted them this morning on marine traffic. So remember, Los Angeles has had 109 vessels at anchor on January 9.
Yep.
Today it's down to 27 because a lot of shippers have diverted their volume away from Los Angeles because of the labor talks, the congestion to Gulf Coast and East Coast ports. Savannah today, 45. I counted 45 docks.
Wow, that's a huge flip. Huge flip.
10 off New York City. Now, it was 18 yesterday. New York's got a pretty good throughput rate. But Savannah is the real bottleneck. Now, Savannah is the number, if I look at my data from June, Savannah was the number 4 port in the country in June. Volumes in Savannah are up 24% year over year. But here's the kicker, and this is what I think everyone's got to watch this year. It's not just the ships at anchor. It's the flow-on effect to ships moving to Savannah Port, Savannah containers going to Charleston to get a dock, because they've got a big new dock there. But that drags truckload capacity to another market. They've got to run longer deadhead to get there. You've got more congestion. You've end up with trains that have, the trains are slowing down, intermodal volume starting to get choked up. So the data point he shared was, and this was really interesting. He said that at the moment, we've got about 255,000 containers on the water coming to Savannah. 255,000. So you say, well, okay, compared to what? Compared to 210,000 this time last year.
Wow.
So he's saying...
That's a huge difference.
Yeah. He's saying congestion's going to get worse. We've got a lot more coming at us than last year. I think this year, the back end of this year is going to see some supply chain disruptions. Now, the flip side is we've got a lot more pop-up yards. People have leased a lot more space to put empty containers and store, ground-loaded containers. So we're still not away from the supply chain congestions. But this time it's not because of just surging import volumes. It's this ongoing congestion that's inland. And that's where truckload comes in to help move some of that capacity. But you're going to see, that's why we were seeing dray carriers do much longer lengths of haul to move some of your customer freight. So you've got to think about all of those things now, because you can't just automatically assume I can find a truck to move it. There's going to be pockets in the market where there'll be very tight truckload capacity, and other markets where there won't be. So this theme of port congestion and volatility at our key ports and volumes spilling over to the truckload market like it did last year will continue, I think, in some of these big ports this year. Not so much Los Angeles. Truckload volumes are down substantially in Los Angeles. Their volumes are pretty flat. So there's definitely been a shift away from the West Coast towards the East Coast. So I think we lost Dan. So DJ.
Yeah, I don't know what happened with Dan, but Dean, I think this is kind of what we were worried about, though, when we seen that they were starting to shift, and Greg Abbott was calling them down to Texas, and then we started to see them shift to the east as well.
Yeah, it was always the fear this year. When I heard at the start of the year that people said, "Oh, it'll take till 2023 for the supply chain to get back to normal," I didn't really believe it because I thought I didn't appreciate how congested things were because you can't see it. We can't see all of the rail yards and all of the ports. You can't just see it at a snapshot. Although the data kind of supports it. I saw a very interesting report this morning, DJ, from Container Exchange. It talks about detention and demurrage. Of the 60 ports they track, the top 5 most expensive ports for demurrage are US ports. The top 5. So demurrage is the time it takes. If you think about demurrage, it's the time within the terminal. It's the length of time beyond the free days that you get to unload a box, and detention is the delayed time of a container outside of the terminal. So they track this, they start their costs at an average of 14 days. But if you're in New York, the average, New York's the worst or the highest. It ranks number 1 of 60 at $3,100 per container after 14 days. Long Beach, $2,700. Hamburg, $833, one of the bigger ports in Europe. Bremerhaven, $841. Singapore, $619. So the top 5 most expensive ports for delays: New York, Long Beach, Los Angeles, Oakland, Savannah, and then you go to Taiwan, Hong Kong, Jakarta. So the US ports are the ones that are at the top of the list in terms of what it costs you to move a container, in terms of those accessorial charges, demurrage and detention costs, which kind of supports what we just said, which is dwell time of containers and chassis trailers is taking so much longer because our warehouses are loaded with inventories already. So I think that's something to watch, and that's why. I'm changing subjects, but that's why the AB5 deal in California is such a big thing, because it's mostly going to affect those dray carriers. There are 1,000. There's something like 9,000 owner-operators in Oakland alone that are impacted by this. There's tens of thousands of guys and girls impacted in Los Angeles. And it's interesting, 6 a.m. today Eastern, in fact, half an hour ago, all of the dray operators in Los Angeles were meeting for a stoppage, a strike.
Yeah,
so,
I've seen that.
Yeah, so AB5 is not done and dusted because I'm changing subjects, but this has got to do with delays within warehouse markets. And I think Los Angeles is going to get even more congested and delayed because a lot of those leased on owner operators that have been draying containers all around the city, some of them are being forced out of business. Some of them will go out of business. Some, are going to go slow and protest like they're doing today. That's going to create more congestion in Los Angeles and kind of reinforce why shippers will want to divert their freight away from Long Beach and Los Angeles, or in fact any West Coast port is what
exactly.
So there's some interesting things going on in the supply chain. We're not out of the woods yet in terms of delays.
We used to, when we were bringing in, one of my customers would bring in about 3,500 containers a year. We would get, and we'd come in waves, right? Because it would come out of Israel, and in different areas. And when it would be in Portugal and that kind of stuff, and when it would come out, you'd have 5, 10, 15 containers go to the yard, and they'd all get put on the same ship. So it was like all these containers came in at once, and this is pre any pandemic. So even then, it was a challenge to get them unloaded. And we would literally sit down and say, okay, so you've got 7 days free, and then it's $236 a day from day 1 to 5, and then it goes up to $295 a day from day 5 to 10, and day 10 to 14 is 600 and something, and after that 14, it's like $2,100 a day. So we would literally take that math and sit down and say, okay, you've got 15 containers coming in from Israel, you've got 15 containers coming in from Portugal. Our ability to unload is 4 containers a day. You start doing the math, you back it up. So we would say, okay, where do we want to, A, keep them on the container, or B, deliver it to the subsidy warehouse? Because you have in, out, and storage, first month storage when you go in, plus you have an out. So where does that balance lie? And I see a lot of shippers these days playing that game where, they're going, okay, well, if I keep it for an extra 2 days, it's $500.
Mhm.
But to get it into a warehouse, then to get it back out, I've got $500 just in out
Exactly.
and storage,
Right.
plus the next set of transportation to get it back to my facility.
Right.
So it's like, okay, well, how do we, and this is the big game of checkers, chess, whatever. It's probably more like chess because there's got to be strategy involved than just
Right.
checkers. But the big game of chess that a lot of shippers are playing is, when we talk to Flair Flexible Packaging, he's got 1.2 million square feet outside his facility that he never had before. That's a lot of square footage. That's a lot of outside warehouse.
Yeah.
And he goes and he's playing a consistent game of, what needs to go where and how is it going to impact overall cost? Because
Right.
if you look at it and you say, okay, we spend an extra $1,000 a container, and you're bringing in 100,000 containers. There's $100,000 spent. What's the ROI versus your product, right? Like
Right.
if we go back to my customer with bed sheets, his overall profit per container was $7,000 prior to all the prices going up. So when it was $3,500, $4,000 to come out of Asia, his profit was $7,000. It got to a point where it was costing him $4,000 just to get it to inland Canada. Then it's shipping it to customers. And he says, what do I do? Do I just lose the customer and not lose the money? Don't make anything? Or do I bite the bullet and suck it up? And it's a big conversation that we need to have with our customers. Like, what does this do?
Yeah.
How does this impact your bottom line? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is a very nuanced subject, right? Because a year ago it was labor. Now it's space, right? So space. Can I quote you what's in this article from an unnamed apparel and footwear shipper in this General Commerce article that was out yesterday? I think it's fascinating because it really supports what we've been saying. It said that its warehouses are full because big box retailers are not taking the inventory amid slowing retail sales. They came to us 30 days ago and said, we'd like to take your orders, but we can't take them now because we just don't have any space. And of course, the person on the phone says, well, we don't have any space either. Problems are very different than a year ago, guys. This is the issue. Last year was lack of labor to unload containers. Today it's space because the inventory is not turning. Right. So a lot of retailers took the gamble on getting the volume in, pulling it forward, thinking the sales would be there. That has slowed down because of inflation and a whole range of other things. So this is a very difficult situation it's just a space issue. And I think that's going to really clog up. So on the truckload side, you could certainly see a higher number of drop trailers being kept longer. You could certainly see a situation where more drop and hook is going to be required and more trailer pools. And I think that's what David Jackson from the CEO of Knight Swift sort of intimated about 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks ago on an earnings call. He was talking about a bigger switch towards trailer pools and more drop and hook as a way to get more efficiency, which makes complete sense.
100%. And also, if you drop and hook with a trailer, not a container, you get that free storage thing again, because they don't necessarily need to unload it that day. They can unload it the next day, maybe the day after, so they get 2-3 days. You do that on 100 loads. You
it's strategic planning.
100 days.
Unlike the 53-foot trailer, that's probably, there are detention charges beyond a certain period of time, but I think trucking's far more generous in that regard, because on the international container side, you're paying rental per container day. That's why your demurrage and detention charges are well over $3,000 out of New York City. The other thing that's sort of looming here is you think about where are all the empties going to be stored? Like, so how do we get the empties back overseas? Like, how do we get the trains loaded, the 2 mile long train with empties, running all the containers back to the ports? Where do we physically store all of these empty containers? Like I said, there's another looming issue just around that. We covered that a fair while ago, but lots of congestion around ports. That's the alarming statistic that's popping up today.
And then it comes into like what we've seen in BC for quite a while now. Right. Getting appointments to return a container is a nightmare.
Yeah.
And then when you try to get an appointment and the port can't give you the appointment, the container company charges you detention on the container. And it's like, well, hold on. I tried to get an appointment today. The port couldn't give me an appointment the next week. Why do I have to pay it? And this is but for all you salespeople out there that might be moving ocean, and Joshua could probably jump in here.
Yeah.
It's a reality of customers going, well, why is that my problem?
Yeah.
Right. Like I have one customer of mine. We unloaded it within 3 hours and called the company. Said, you got to come back and get it. The company says, we're jammed today. We'll come get it tomorrow. They never got it the next day. And we're calling them. We get it delivered. They come back to us with a $2,500 bill. And I said to my customer, I said, absolutely not. And I said to the 4PL, I said, absolutely not. This is not happening. They said, well, you owe it. I said, no, we don't. We called you and told you it was delivered. Now it's on you to get it back to the port. We did our job. We unloaded it in 3 hours. And we fought it to the point where they just said, okay, we're going to absorb. We don't want your business anymore. And I said, fine. I don't want to deal with you anymore. And, my poor customer is stuck in between. He's going, Dan, can you help me? And I'm like, I'm doing everything I can. And they're like sending him email after email after email. And I'm going, okay, first of all, you send me the emails and I'll take care. But it was crazy because the carrier didn't have the capacity. The carrier they chose, not my carrier, their carrier, did not have the capacity to get the container picked up and brought back. Then when they did get it picked up and brought back, they couldn't get an appointment to deliver it back to the port for like 5 days. And that, again, that draws the big question. Who's responsible for that?
Yeah.
Any customer you talk to will be like, hell no, that mofo is your problem, not mine.
Yeah, you pay. Yeah.
As soon as that email goes out saying emptied, come pick it up, period, or exclamation point, send, whose responsibility does it become? Joshua's live today, brother. Boy, are you running right now or something? You must be all over it, brother. I'm just one load. You probably have thousands with problems, 100%. But you know what? That load, and you sharing with that with us, really gives us some insight as to how much this internet delay helped hurt. East Coast ports are still a mess, but the biggest problem that seems to be available equipment in the inland rails, 100%. Joshua says, I moved a container last year for $75,000 in rail storage because of that graduated scale. I really hope that's 75.
I think it had $75,000 in rail storage.
In rail storage, that's
7,500 or 75,000.
You said 75,000.
Yeah, it says 75,000.
If it's 75K in rail storage, no wonder these people are making bank, man.
Jesus,
Brian, my man, railroad.
Brian, I love that. What's that cheat code actually for? You got to share it because I know that's a real cheat code. That is a real cheat code.
Which one?
Up, down, left, right. It really is. That's so funny.
BA. I don't know. Elect start.
It's a Nintendo game. I just can't remember what.
Oh, you guys go. That's hilarious. It comes down to effectively educating customers. The biggest offenders are those charter vessels. I've had some stay out of port for up to 3 months. Holy crap! Joshua said correct.
I knew it.
and he said 75K.
Oh my god.
75K. Okay, now I know what you're talking about. Contra. That was like the best game ever.
That was to get all the weapons. That's to get all the weapons.
Yeah.
Endless lives. That's what it was. Endless lives.
Yeah, endless lives. And you would just go and go and go.
Thank you for sharing that, Brian. That's hilarious.
That brought us back to I should have had the original Atari shirt on today. That brought us back.
Dean, I gotta bring this up. So Samantha Jones, shout out Samantha, great article. She had a post 2 days ago about nearshoring, reshoring, and talking about, so it kind of justified our flatbed idea. She said construction of new manufacturing, according to this Bloomberg report, new manufacturing facilities in the U.S. has increased 116% this year.
Yeah, we're seeing some insane volumes coming across the border in flatbed. Like around Laredo, like really tight
crazy
city in Laredo, like off the charts volumes in the spot market. So just fascinating. I think nearshoring is going to be a lot of that. We're seeing a lot of steel will move. It's very similar to 2018, like both rates and volumes. Very similar year, both very strong industrial economies. So there's I think it's a pretty strong economy yet. The fact that diesel prices have come down a bit, we're still not out of the woods there. I mean, that's the single biggest thing that's driving the truckload market right now, at diesel prices. They're down 24 cents in 3 weeks. Now the EIA came out with their weekly update on Monday on time after not publishing anything for 3 weeks. So that's good news. But I think it was 568. Still a long way from where we need to be for carriers to be sort of comfortable and still in business.
Have you guys ever noticed how this all works? So we were well over $2 a liter, which comes out to over, I think it was $8.70 a gallon. And when the Ontario government came out and said, okay, we're going to get like 12 cents off, then another 6 cents off and everything. And I found myself yesterday driving by a gas station. I have 3/4 of the tank left, and I drive by and it says $1.71.9 a liter. I'm like, oh my God, that's cheap. And I stopped and I went, holy shit, how does this, like, it's crazy how we, like $1.71 is so expensive for fuel. Like it's literally insane how expensive that is. But compared to the 210 or 2.9 or 2.8, it's cheap, right? So like it's this programming where it's up so high that when it comes down to a level, you're like, this is cheap. Same thing happened with wood. Last summer, wood was so high. I go back to buy wood this summer and I'm like, damn, that's like $4 cheaper. I'm gonna buy 4 of them, right? And it's like, no, but 2 years ago or 3 years ago, it was $9 cheaper than that, $10 cheaper. And it's like, it's funny. We had a friend of ours come over, and he's helping me finish off a lot of the little tiny intricate things on the cabana. And he says, so how much in wood is back here? And I went, well, we did this part for this much. And I said, we did that part. And I look at the difference, and there's probably more wood at this part, and it was half the price of the second part. Like, insane. And then I think this is where a lot of these market rate fluctuations give us that false sense of, oh, it's cheaper today, let's go for it, right? And I just think it's that programming, it's that paradigm shifts that we've got to consistently make. Joshua's all over it this morning.
No, Josh.
You seeing this?
I love it.
Joshua,
you took a break from running today,
these,
at least right now.
Yeah.
Thank you, Josh.
Yeah, I know. Having a hold of these containers for so long increases your line haul and fuel rates, because not only is there the logistics of delivering the container, but the logistics of storing it too, 100%. And then you have your on-off fee, like your on-off, your chassis fee. Go ahead, Dean.
No, the lifting fees, yeah, absolutely. You can't ignore those.
Yeah, and I mean, they might only be $50 a container, but that's $100 a container on off, right? Then you add the extra 250, 300, 500, 600, 700 in storage. There's $700-800 US. And then, now your delivery fee, or then you keep it for 2 days at your place unloading because you have no space for it. I mean, it adds up huge. Joshua says in LA, they were out of space to store containers in carriers' yards. They were storing them in the street and racking up $250 a day in tickets because they had nowhere else to put empties. Absolutely. Says it doesn't make sense.
To be honest,
TBH in mid 2000s, oil was over $100 per barrel, and fuel prices were a third of what they are today.
Great point, Josh. I don't think anybody really knows that, but yeah, great point.
Yeah. It reminds me. So today's Inception call, we instead of yesterday, because I was delayed at the hospital, we're doing a makeup call of Inception today, and it's all about this fact of what is really a good deal. And Prime Day is going on yesterday, today, and tomorrow, right? Yeah. So everybody's aware of Prime Day. It's like this huge event. And it's interesting because I noticed something this year in Prime Day that I've never noticed, and I think we are seeing the same thing in logistics. I bought a speaker last week, for an outdoor waterproof speaker, and I paid $56 for it. And I was like, okay, it's a 50 watt, it's got big bass, it's all we need out in the backyard. So I get a Prime Day deal. I'm on this morning on Prime Day, and I go in, and the same speaker is regularly $89 at a 27% discount for $64. And I'm like, hold on. So and it's the same speaker. So I'm like, I don't think I paid that. So I go back in my orders, and I realize, and when I bought it in the orders a week ago, I had like a 6% discount because I'm a Prime member or whatever. And so like they literally jacked that price up to reduce it. So it's interesting because, we look at these Black Friday deals. We look at these, for us, it's Boxing Day, the day after Christmas. And we look at all these deals. And I guarantee you, if you go on to Amazon and you look at some of the stuff you've bought over the last little while and then go to Prime Day and find it on Prime Day, you might actually be paying more than you would pay normally, but they jack it up because they create this excitement around Prime Day.
Bingo.
Right?
So that's master marketing and retail, y'all. Just put a sticker on it, put a big sale on it. Everybody jumps all over it. Actually, my partner for the flea market, he said his dad was a total crazy master retailer, where he had a gas station and sold more beer out of his gas station than my partner did out of his bar. And he said it was just because he would put 50% off this and that. Sometimes it was charging more. Yeah, that's retail, y'all. wait till after. I'll tell you the secret. Wait till they have to liquidate everything, because they had a bunch and they didn't sell through what they were trying to sell through. Wait for that.
I got a student of mine that's dealing with Daman actually out west, and he's got a bunch of Western freight. And because the spot market's doing this, the customer called him and said, "Hey, listen, like, I'm getting some pretty cheap rates from West." And it was awesome because Damon's team at Centurion educated this gentleman on why it's doing the loops. He educated the customer, and a lot of it is kind of the bait and hook scenario, where it's like, okay, this week I need the freight going there because I have none. Then it's like they get you, and then the price slowly rises, right? So it's, unfortunately, that jumping between contract spot creates those issues in there. And it was so total props to Daman and his crew for educating people. I love that. Mm-hmm. Well, Lisa says, when I hear 50% off or whatever, I always ask, percentage off of what? Yeah. It's such a misconception. It is. It's huge. Yeah, and that misconception goes right back to that ocean and rail. How many times have you guys gotten invoices in from rail or from ocean, from steamship lines? You're like, what the heck is this charge? Like, what is that charge? What do we do there? What do we do there? And it all adds up, right? Like, especially today, this year, every single customer we've had on the show has said, I can't be wrong. What's your focus this year? Profit. Need to make profit. Right? And, it'd be interesting if there's any, actually, Jeff would be a good person to ask because he's done that side before. Jeff, did you ever incorporate accessorial charges, like saying on average we spend $500 in accessorial charges, so I'm going to add that to the budget of this freight shipping? Or was it like, hey, your rate's $2,200, that's the budget, and you go with it, and then accessorials actually eat into that bottom margin? If you can answer that, Jeff, that'd be awesome.
That's a great question too, Dan. Yeah, if any other customers are on here too, I'd like to hear, because that's a great question.
Yeah, to help your customer, one should look at all options. One rail car can hold 220,000 pounds or 3 to 4 truckloads of material, just an FYI. Daman, you're here, buddy. Thank you. Always important to have those conversations and not shy away from them. Education is money. Yes, sir. Yes. And I think that's why this Wednesday show is so money. It's money. As the kids say, it's Gucci. It's Gucci.
He just went Gucci. Yeah. Dan, you didn't. I love it.
Yeah. I've said a few things today that are kind of not really shouldn't be said.
I love it. Okay. No, I love it.
What were you saying, Dean?
Just on Jeff's point about intermodal, right? So intermodal is a valuable option. We need a very efficient, fluid intermodal business for all of our shippers. And the fact that it's getting congested and slowing down is not good. Volumes are down a couple of % year over year. But if you look at the cost of moving freight on a train, intermodal train versus truck, shippers are saving about 32% over truckload right now. That's contract. On the spot market, it's only 10%. Right, so the rates on railroad intermodal spot rates are closer. There's still a 10% premium. We covered this 2 weeks ago. So you're only saving 10%. When you get to 10%, it's almost better to use truckload in the spot market for those intermodal moves. And there's a few lanes today. I looked at them on Los Angeles, Chicago. Shippers are saving 40% on contract moves by using intermodal versus truck. It's a huge amount of saving. So it depends on the commodity. If it's for inventory replenishment, you can afford the transit time and the delays. But Chicago, Dallas, Baltimore, Chicago truckload is cheaper at the moment. So there are probably some lanes where truckload is going to be a better option for your shippers. But overall, right now, the way rates are sitting, shippers are doing pretty well on the intermodal side, and we need that system to work.
Definitely. Brian
And
said
and
he's
at
biased
10%, if you're only 10%, the control, the visibility, the time frame, like all of that,
exactly. Yeah,
you're
it's worth
probably
the
going to
10% at
choose
that point.
truck over rail for sure. I mean,
It
at
comes back to the
32%,
timing. Yeah.
well, yeah, and at 32%, you're going to adjust time schedules, right? Like you're like, okay, 32%, that's a big nugget. That's a big nugget. But if you look at it, $1,000 load, 10% is $100.
Yeah,
Right?
hey, if the
So
warehouse is full, I'm not in a hurry to get that train rolling. So,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
so there's
Yeah,
that.
and that's, I mean, and you can see more people resorting to that, meaning normally that would do truckload saying, well, I'm actually going to put it on rail because I buy myself an extra 5 days to figure out what the hell's going on in my warehouse and make space for this stuff. So it's like kind of you're getting both ends of it, right?
Yeah.
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 Well,
Well, you see, Brian is biased because he's the railroad sensei. He's big in
Exactly.
rail. So he's very biased.
Great
Yeah.
to have you on.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah. Great to see you too, brother. You have an epic morning
Yes,
yourself.
sir.
Man.
Have a
So
great
Jeff,
morning.
here we go. Accessorials are a moving target as they're not set in stone, but you should use a buffer based on past costs when building a budget/forecast. There we go. So
Great point,
and
Jeff.
yeah, 100%. I think every shipper should. I mean, I'm pretty sure at this point most shippers are saying, okay, we've averaged out how much we've paid in demurrage or extra charges and accessorials, and kind of here's the number. Because I would think especially publicly traded companies that have boards of directors and investors to answer to. Speaking of that, did you guys hear Elon Musk pulled out of his $44 billion bid for Twitter?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So just created a lawsuit for him for whatever reason. I don't know why, but
if you read in his defense, though, through Discovery, he actually gets to find out what they do with all the bots.
Exactly.
Because that's why he pulled out. He said on Twitter. So that's if it was on Twitter, it must be true, of course. But that's what he said in one of his tweets.
Yeah, they found out there's a lot of bots on there.
He wanted to know how many there were, I guess, to see how much that was adding.
And they wouldn't give him a real number. He thinks it's higher than what it is. Yeah, that's what happened.
I see. I didn't know that part of it. That's interesting. That's interesting. So Jeff says Monroe, New Jersey, Reno to Monroe, $10,200, 714, and 9,100 on 714 on intermodal. So truckload is 10,000, 9,100 on intermodal.
There you go.
And that's a big lane. That's a big haul from Reno to Jersey. That's a big run.
Mm-hmm.
Monroe Township, New Jersey. Yeah, I got it. All right, just looking at the rates here now. So they're running at $276 a mile all in.
$1,000 a load.
Times 2.76. That's 74.27 on truck all in. What did Jeff say? 91. 200. Oh, it might be reefer. Is it reefer or dry van, Jeff?
Jeff, is that reefer or dry van, brother?
Yeah. What? Yeah.
It wouldn't be reefer. I don't think. Yeah, there's not much volume there. Anyway, so he's right though. There's more value on for intermodal on some lanes if you can stand the transit time delays and all of those issues.
Yes.
That we talked about.
And I guess if your warehouse is full, you'll accept the transit time delays, especially if this product is like a back to school product where you've got a month or two. You're like, hell, get it lost in a yard for a week until you find it. I'm all good. Like, if you want to skip this train to put somebody else's, emergency product on, just take my spot for the next 5 trains. I'll get it mid-August and I save myself 4 weeks of storage, right?
Yes.
Jeff says it's COFC.
Container on flat car. Yeah. So that's the container, probably a 53.
And Dan, to your point, I wonder if that could be part of the transition to the New York ports too. If they take longer, you're expecting that stuff's going to sit. If you don't have anywhere for it to go, maybe that's.
But also, New York has the highest detention charges. So if it is sitting and you delay the inbound or the receiving of it, how much does that demurrage detention add up to? Is it worth it, right? It's literally a numbers game. Like you almost have to play the numbers. And I could see tons more people saying, not only because LA and Long Beach are congested, but if I send it over to Savannah, I'm running an extra 14 days on the water. That's bought me 2 weeks. Now I've got Drake, now, you know what I mean? So now you're like you're literally playing that chess hand, looking 3-4 moves ahead,
Right.
to say, okay, that's going to buy us a little bit of time. Sure, it's an extra $500 for the container to get here, but that $500 bought us 2 weeks. We do storage, it's going to cost us $1,000 for that container. We just saved $500, and we don't have the headache of where is it going, when is it, you know what I mean? There's, yeah.
So I think that
I just wonder.
The summary of
and again, it just goes back to John Brewer's comments. When we had him on the show a few times, shippers are getting they're getting very smart. They're getting very strategic. They'll figure it out,
right.
And that's what they're having to do.
We lost Dan briefly.
Yeah, we lost Dan
but I think, DJ, the summary, as we sort of get to the end of the show, the thing that sort of struck me this week, and again, these are some great journalists at Journal of Commerce that are writing these pieces. They've got their sources of data that are very reliable. But I think it comes back to a space and equipment issue that's plagued us during the entire pandemic, especially at the ports, and that's flowing over into the overall supply chain. So that's something I think everybody's got to be acutely aware of this year. Time is going to be a really big factor, as is space and equipment, as opposed to this time last year when it was more labour related. We're seeing more fluidity in the market. So it's going to be, I think Jeff made a good point. You're probably going to have to add in more accessorial buffers into this, more time, more costs.
Yep.
That's a really good point. I don't know how you'd go about doing that, but that's maybe when Jeff's on the show next week, we can dive into that a little bit more about how you plan for accessorials when you have delays like this on both intermodal and truckload. Probably less so truckload, because they're not going to be charging, daily truck van fees like the intermodal, like the international containers would be.
Yeah.
Again.
Definitely.
Sorry, guys. Just had a phone call I had to take.
No worries.
I know I've been jumping on and off all day today. It's crazy, but hey, you know what? We're gonna probably have to do this a little more going forward. Hopefully, it'll slow down in the next little bit, and we will have a bunch of things in order.
Dean, I wonder. I don't think it's happened yet, but I wonder, and maybe just something for everybody listening to kind of keep an eye on. I know there's been talks of them either cutting down on certain tariffs out of China too. So I wonder if that will amp up thing, or if that could bring more.
Yeah, teacher, it's a great question. I don't know. Maybe on some of the non-retail side of things, if they do things like chassis trailers, I'm not sure where that stands. There were some tariffs on chassis trailers that were impacting the supply side. Don't know the answer to that, DJ. That's one I'd have to dig into.
Yeah, curious.
It would be interesting because I know, but prior to the tariffs, there was a huge, like you said earlier, Dean, there was a huge rush of get it in before the tariffs start, like a huge spike in shipments. It'd be interesting to see if it kind of goes back to, yeah, interesting. Mm-hmm.
Hey guys,
and do we see a shift away from Trans-Pacific and going more towards the European Union and all that kind of stuff? Yeah.
Certainly Trans-Pacific trade lane volumes have been, there's an increase in volume of those diverting through the Panama Canal for those post-Panamax. I think that's what you call them, the ones that can fit through the Panama Canal. They're up to about 15,000 TEU. Of course, there's some other vessels that have been running west out of Asia through the Suez Canal direct to the east coast. So that you're seeing a bit more of that with some of the bigger vessels. Now those ports are being deepened and widened and added some more cranes, like Charleston, for example, is a port that's seeing pretty strong volumes. So, it's a good point. But we're definitely seeing a shift towards the west coast, though, away from the west coast to the east coast.
Yeah, exactly. Crazy.
That's interesting.
So, I'll give you a quick summary on the rate situation. We're seeing dry van rates start to come down. On contract rates are coming down slightly in dry van. So with the market has crested. Early part of June, they're down about 6 cents per mile from the June average to the first 2 weeks of July. So contract rates after 6-7 quarters of double-digit rate increases, those rates are coming down. Spot rates are about a little bit lower than where they were last year when you consider all-in rates. So, but the gap between spot and contract is about 60 cents. That's a pretty wide gap between the two. Spot rates in dry van are sitting pretty flat this week, which is interesting. We normally expect them to go down, so we're seeing them average about $1.98 excluding fuel. But they were flat this week. Refrigerated rates are dropping. They're down about 5 cents a mile this week, which is, again, seasonally right on track. We don't expect any difference there. Flatbed's cooling off also. So I think that's we're seeing cooling of the housing market reduce some of those volumes.
Well, we're seeing a lot more houses on the market, and they are going a lot slower than they used to go.
Right.
To total shift, and I guess that's inflation.
Yeah.
You brought up something, Dean, that I think everyone has to pay attention to if you have contracted rates. So you're saying spot rates are now 60 cents a mile lower than contracted rates. At what point do you see shippers coming back and saying, "Hey, whoa, time out. Like, can we adjust some of these contracted rates?"
Yeah, I think they're already doing it, Dan. I think carriers are already going back to shippers looking to renegotiate their contracts to secure the volume because they know the market has cooled off. There's more capacity in the market. Some people talk about this being a demand-driven. Demand is cooling off. Depends what sector you're in. Produce volumes aren't materializing. Flatbed volumes are still, they're running about 2018 levels. But there's still a very strong industrial economy that trucks, haul freight for. So we're still seeing pretty good volumes. It's just that we've got an oversupplied truck market. There's a lot more trucks came into the market in the last year than I think we've ever seen, and those trucks are all competing for the same or slightly fewer loads. That's right. But also, as soon as that happened in February, a lot of carriers started to honour their first tender loads in the contract market, so you had less volume slipping through the routing guides out into the spot market, right? So if the top of the routing guides got the cheapest rate, a lot of those carriers were accepting those loads now as opposed to rejecting a quarter of them a year ago because there were favourable spot rates. There were favourable spot rates so you could haul spot rate and reject the contract. That's flipped back around now again. That's fairly normal. So we've just got an oversupplied market. We think spot rates will continue to decrease, maybe another 8 to 10 cents a mile before they start to bottom out. To your question, I think shippers have got pretty good memories. The faster they drive capacity out of the market by driving rates down, by dumping volume into the spot market, the quicker we get to the next upcycle where rates start to increase and capacity tightens. So play that game at your own risk.
There's a bunch of games going on, right? Like I heard a report on the news a couple of days ago. It was, I think, towards the end of last week, or it was Saturday or something.
Right.
Where they were talking about something to the tune of 100 hectares a day get bought up in Ontario for new construction. And this is all farmland that's getting built up. And they're saying a lot of it is pretty much what we've said for a while now, and we've talked about it on this show, where, if you're a farmer and the heat waves we have in the summer and the lack of rain and, 50% of the output, 60% of the output, and you've got tens of millions of dollars in equipment and all these loans and everything, and you got quota to keep and all this, we're running into that age where it's second and third generation are just going, I'm done, like this is enough, and they're selling 500-acre farms for $50 million, and they're walking away because they're like, I can continue to do this and get up and break my back and destroy my body for 30, 40, 50% of the yield that we used to get, or I can just sell for $50 million. And it'll be interesting because there's also a rise, I don't know if you guys have seen it yet or if you guys have heard about it, in industrial growth. So there's companies in Ontario that are like a 200,000 square foot facility, and it's literally rack upon rack of growing lettuce or growing tomatoes indoors hydroponically.
Wow.
Because they're like, yeah, we can turn it over in a couple of weeks because they're great. It's kind of like Panasonic. If you guys follow Panasonic at all. So Panasonic is all about sustainability, and they've actually grown bamboo forests out in Asia and created entire communities of houses built with bamboo, because every 9 months it replenishes, as opposed to trees, which take 50 years. And when I was at Panasonic one day, they had this big showroom, and they like it's all about compact and everything, and their insulation is about a half inch thick, and it's like R80. So you can literally, your walls can go from being 2x4 to being like 1 inch walls, and the insulation you'll have as if you were insulated with foam. I mean, it's crazy, the developments, and
Right.
then I think this is the way it's going, is more sustainable products. It'd be interesting because when you
Mhm.
bring things indoors, you control the environment as opposed to being susceptible to the environment. Do you know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
And it'd be
Mhm.
interesting to see the way this all transitions over the next 5 to 10 years, because let's face it, the summers are getting hotter, winters are getting bleaker. I know for us in Southern Ontario, I don't know about everyone else, but for us in Southern Ontario, like it's to the point where we guess if we're going to have a snowmobile season. Like,
Right.
literally guess. It's like,
Oh wow.
will we or will we not? Oh yeah, I mean, there was not this year, but last year, our trails never even opened here. You always had to truck 2.5, 3 hours north, 100%. Now, don't
Wow.
get me wrong, there's snow on the ground, but there's a difference between snow being on the ground and having that
Yeah.
80-centimeter base to
Right.
ride sleds. It's a complete different scenario.
Mhm.
But you look at ski hills, for example. How long ago? 15 years ago, they went to making their own snow because the weather just wasn't providing it for them, right? So
Yeah.
it's like they took their business into their own hands. So it'll be interesting to see what the next couple of years hold for a lot of these companies, and especially the places where a lot of the produce is happening, and indoor ponds for fish, growing fish. You know what I mean? Just that consumption rate, because we're consuming at mass quantities right now. That's been unforeseen in many years, and I think it's going to continue. And I think a lot of these things are going to go indoors, which means more industrial space is going to start popping up, which means less farmland, less locations. Like, I mean, I don't know you guys, but we've had a huge coyote and bush wolf problem in our area for years. Oh yeah, dogs go missing out of the backyard. Like, we had friends, their dog was in their backyard on a leash, and two coyotes just attacked it, like right on the leash in their backyard in daytime. Oh yeah, it's crazy because there's so many communities being built, and they're taking away their habitat, so they're moving north, and they're saying, okay, so we can't find deer, rabbit, and all this in the woods. So hey, there's a backyard with two dogs in it.
Mhm.
Yum, lunchtime,
Lunch.
right? Like, cats are missing. I mean, you drive around our neighborhood and it's like missing cat, missing dog, missing cat, missing dog, and it's coyotes and bush wolves get them. My wife found a bush wolf on our back deck last year, just walking onto our back deck into our outdoor kitchen, sniffing around for food, and she's like banging on the window, going, "Get out of here!" And things just like, She literally walked out on the deck with like a broom and was like, "Get out of here, go!" And the thing just kind of looked at her like, "Yeah, whatever." And kind of trotted off, and and it's like, holy crap! Oh yeah, the dynamics are changing, huge.
Crazy. All right.
All
Well, I
right,
think
so do we have? Oh, so just let's address these two, and then we'll jump off. But will they go back up in the short run as we move into peak season? I guess that's the pricing, costing.
yeah, he's talking about price. Yeah, I
We
think
think so. Yeah, we
I
definitely
think so.
Definitely think so.
So actually, Jeff brings up a good question. Is it beneficial to reduce contract rate? There are many things to think about before doing so.
Exactly. This would be a great topic for next week's show with Jeff's on, right? Because
Sure.
Yes.
that's the mistake a lot of shippers make, is especially when they jump into the spot market, is you sacrifice service and a whole lot of things.
Yeah, they give up that relationship and
Yeah.
they're searching.
Let's
They're swimming
make
in the
that
pond.
next week's topic.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
it. All right, well,
So,
hey, thank you.
Talk about a hook, eh? For 7
Yeah.
days. That's a good hook.
That's
There
it.
we go.
So Jeff, be ready. Yes. So everybody, thank you as always for joining us. Dean, the man, the crystal ball. Thank you for giving us your wisdom as always on Wednesdays, guys. Triple D Day. This is the day not to miss. If you want to know
I'm
what's
waiting
going
for
on,
Dean
in
to
this
drop out
crazy-
lottery numbers, boys.
Yeah,
I'm
right.
waiting for Dean to drop out lottery numbers.
I know.
And the three of us can be doing this from a beach somewhere every day.
Oh, that would be
Awesome.
nice, Dean. If you figured that out, but let's talk separate.
Tell me
But
first.
thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for joining us as you do weekly. Tomorrow, don't miss it. Steve Rizzo, Conversations with
Bob.
Come on now. As always, thank you to American Logistics, Centurion Trucking, Daman, People Over Profits for making this possible, and to all of you for all of your comments and keeping us going. Quote to take us out is from Mark Batterson. And it is, if you wait for perfect conditions to seize an opportunity, you'll be waiting to the day you die.
Seize the woo. Window of opportunity.
Centurion Trucking, our motto is people before profit. Today's market requires more transparency, consistency, and focus on what our clients need to win. Centurion Trucking and American Logistics are poised to help their clients achieve and surpass their targets. If you're looking for a team that honors your needs, dreams, and aspirations, then get a hold of Daman at American Logistics or